There's a hero. Kevin Shipp is a hero. If we had more like Kevin, and I think with the kind of courage Kevin shows, he has inspired others to start coming to the surface. And if all of us provide the cover, and this is key, it's up to us to provide the cover for those in academia, those in agencies, those in the military who know this is going on. It's up to us to provide the cover for them to come out of the shadows. And if we leave here tonight and go back to simply carrying out about our lives as we did before, we're missing the point. It's up to all of us to provide the cover that people in these agencies, military and academia, need to come out of the shadows and change the equation. And this is one man that's helped it happen. I have a round of applause for Kevin Shipp, whom I respect greatly.
Thank you, Dane. I always start by saying I refer to myself as a recovering CIA officer. And we don't go through 12-step programs, we go through 24-step programs. And the first 12 steps are learning how to tell the truth again. That's the hard one. And there are some benefits for being a CIA whistleblower, believe it or not. My mail is open before I get it, which is kind of convenient. My cell phone turns itself on and off all by itself. You know? Usually when I'm talking, you can ask my wife, when I come to things like this, it turns itself on, records our conversations, then saves it to my voicemail. That actually happens. And another benefit, if I'm out driving around traveling and I'm lost, there's always somebody following me. I go back and ask directions, I'm good to go. So this is going to be a serious lecture this evening. This is, without a doubt, probably the most important speech I've ever given, and it's probably the most personally risky also. I come from the belly of the beast, the cult-like world of secrecy that operates behind what we see as our elected government, the belly of the beast. I came out to expose this because I saw specifically, in my case, the CIA engage in unconstitutional and illegal activity outside of the Constitution, which for me is everything now. I saw them violate international law with some of their operations and engage in some pretty serious human rights violations. Now, I don't know about you all, but I, as an American citizen, I did not vote for any of those things. And our elected government didn't vote for any of those things, but they're doing them, and I'll show you why. I hope tonight, hope and pray that tonight this speech makes a difference, what I'm about to show you. And I hope tonight it starts kind of a social civil revolution when we stand up against this tyrannical system here that has stepped outside our Constitution and engaged in egregious things. It needs to be reformed, maybe even dismantled. If I can have a hand in that, then thank God. I'm going to talk about the shadow government. Now, you hear a lot of talk out there about the deep state all over the place on news and talk shows. See, it's safe to talk about the deep state now because there's no real risk. It's gotten kind of popular. Some of us were talking about the secret government in 2012 when it was not popular and it was a little tough. Everybody's talking about the deep state, but they're not, and there's some good folks out there talking about that, but they're not giving everybody the full picture. And they use the terms deep state and shadow government as if they're one and the same. They are not one and the same. They are two different entities in a vast trillion-dollar matrix that is now controlling our elected government outside the Constitution behind Washington, D.C. I'm going to show you how they do it. We got a lot of stuff to cover. Forgive me, I'm going to have to roll through a lot of this, and I'm hoping by the end some of your jaws may drop, but at least you're going to see what's going on. All of you, because I talk to people all the time, know that this government is functioning secretly and doing things that it shouldn't. You've seen it, you know it in your gut, you sense it. Every single person I talk to, including in the dining room this morning, yeah, something's not right here. Something is not right with our government. So let's get into this. I want to start by saying this because it is so important. We are, or at least were, a constitutional government. Were we not? Our government is founded on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, isn't it? Now, I want to remind people that the Constitution is not a nice, fluffy, philosophical document. It's not just a good piece of ideology. It is the law of the United States. It is the supreme law of the land, and it supersedes the entire rest of the U.S. criminal justice system. So if a person, including the government, violates the Constitution, they have committed a felony. So let's just remember that. If the government violates the Constitution, they have committed a felony. So if they try to make the people look like the bad guys, we'll find out really it works the other direction. Remember this. It is the Constitution. That is the reason I'm standing up here, because we no longer live in a constitutional government. We are serving under a post-constitutional government staffed by congressmen who are now statesmen. So let's move on. The shadow government and the deep state are not the same thing. You hear people say this, well, the deep state is after Donald Trump because they're holdovers from the Obama administration that are penetrators into the CIA and others. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a smokescreen. I'll show you that the shadow government is not leftover Obama people. It is a matrix system that has functioned across every single administration going back to JFK, Republican and Democrats alike. So the shadow government is the secret part of government. The CIA, the NSA, and I'll show you a host of other secret intelligence agencies that are part of the shadow government. It functions through the unbridled, unconstitutional power of secrecy. That's the shadow government. Beneath the shadow government is what you hear a lot of talk about. It's called the deep state. Now, the deep state is this massive financial, multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar matrix that includes the military-industrial complex all of you probably have heard about. I'll shed a little bit more light on that. The deep state functions in the same matrix connected to the shadow government, but much of the time the shadow government rules the deep state through the power of secrecy. Secrecy agreements, the state secrets privilege, and other things. So they are intimately connected in running our government behind the scenes. They manipulate our elected government behind the scenes. Now that is a dramatic statement. I think by the end of tonight I'm going to prove to you that it's going on. I saw it personally. There's a lot of things I can't talk about. I have to watch everything I say, honestly. For the last 15 years, they've just been waiting for me to make one mistake. I haven't made it yet. So let's talk about this, the shadow government and the deep state. Deep state is run by money, power, and greed. That's what runs the deep state. The shadow government, their fuel is fear and intimidation. Here's the shadow or secret government, the unconstitutional power of government secrecy. I'm going to show you the components of the secret government, many of them that function outside the Constitution. The Director of National Intelligence has 17 intelligence agencies underneath him at this point that process 90 to 100,000 bits of classified information a day, some of which should not be classified. You've got the Department of Homeland Security, secret agencies there. You've got the Department of State. Hillary Clinton ran guns in Benghazi secretly using Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Most people don't know that. She did it through the secret system. You got the Defense Intelligence Agency that engaged in the torture program. Some people died. They also tried to recruit American citizens to be informants within the United States. I mean, folks, this is an 8-hour lecture, so I'm going to have to pack some of this in there because there's just so much here. But anyway, you got the National Reconnaissance Office that runs the satellite program, all the birds that are up there, and there is a bunch of them. You have the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the big secret agency that worked with Google through a big contract and set up Google Earth. So Google worked with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency through CIA InQtel to set up Google Earth. So you think it's only Google watching you? It's not. Sadly, Silicon Valley has been recruited by the shadow government. Let's move. JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command. Most people don't know about it, but this is the president's secret army. The president of the United States has his own secret army, special operators that he sends on presidential order into foreign countries in secret to engage in killings, overturning governments, and things that the American people don't know about. It's a secret force. Then you've got the FBI conducting warrantless searches, national security letters where they come into your business and order your supervisor to turn over all of your financial records, and if he or she says anything about them being there, they put your supervisor in jail. Violation of the Fourth Amendment. Now I'm going to talk specifically tonight, because this is so vast, about I consider the two top tiers of what I call the shadow government or the secret government. The first of that is the National Security Agency. Heard a lot about them, haven't we? I'm working with William Binney, the NSA whistleblower who blew the whistle on the NSA surveillance program, house raided by a SWAT team, a gun put to his head. We'll talk about the NSA a little bit. I'm going to focus on what I call the central node of the shadow government, an unconstitutional agency that used to be my life. And I was a senior managing supervisor there in counterintelligence and other things I'll talk about later. It is this one right here, that is the node, the central node of the shadow government, functions outside the Constitution through the power of secrecy, and not even Congress knows everything that it's doing. Is there a constitutional problem with that? You better believe there is. I'll show you exactly how bad that is. The CIA was created through the Council on Foreign Relations, which started back in 1921. They were instrumental in creating the CIA. The CFR was, and back when the CFR created the CIA, they were tied directly into guess who? The mainstream media. The owners of the Washington Post, the Grahams, were members, ranking members of the Council on Foreign Relations. The CIA was feeding information directly into the Washington Post. Philip and Catherine Graham were publishing stories that the CIA had told them to study. Now, in the long, wonderful history of the Washington Post, who owns the Washington Post now? Jeff Bezos of Amazon. What did he just do? He entered into a $6 million contract with guess who? The CIA. So the circle continues. I could spend an hour on the mainstream media's connection to intelligence. Sadly, we don't have that time. But just understand that the CFR was instrumental in creating the CIA. They were directly connected to the mainstream media, and the Washington Post, New York Times, CBS, and others that were feeding information directly to the CIA to be published to alter the opinions of the American people. Okay, we'll just leave that there for now. The deep state, let's talk about what makes up the deep state. Underneath, you can see I put the deep state underneath the shadow government, because the shadow government is this powerful monolith outside the Constitution. Much of the deep state, the military-industrial complex, is not violating the Constitution, but they are controlling our elected officials. Okay, so there's a little bit difference, but they are connected pretty intimately. In that, you've got the military-industrial complex. Everybody's heard about that probably. What you haven't heard is Eisenhower originally called it the military-industrial congressional complex, because Congress is tied in so deeply with the military-industrial complex and the deep state that they manipulate what the congressmen and senators do and how they vote, and I will prove that tonight. So Congress is just as tied into the military-industrial complex as Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, and the others are. Who is the main representative in our government of the people? Congress, right? If they own Congress, we don't have a vote or a voice anymore, and that's the idea. All right, let's go through some of them. They own the intelligence contractors, the defense contractors. We're talking billions of dollars here in revenue that comes from your taxes. The military-industrial complex, about $4.8 million a year is spent by military-industrial complex, the lobbyists, to influence Congress and put money into their PACs, leadership PACs, re-election campaigns, and others, to the tune of $4 or $5 million a year. Huge impact on Congress. There's foreign lobbyists. Saudi Arabia and Israel might as well have a congressional slot on Capitol Hill. They are so influential on our government that they actually have a serious impact on political decisions in Washington. You've got the Federal Reserve, the secret bank that just gave out a couple $1 trillion to some unknown corporations in the military-industrial complex that they won't tell anybody about because their deliberations are secret. With whose money? With our money. So the Federal Reserve is tied in with this. We've got Wall Street. Wall Street funds all of this, the military-industrial complex. Wall Street is so plugged in to the military-industrial complex and the shadow government. It was Wall Street attorneys that formed the CIA. Wall Street has been in the shadow government and the deep state going back to 1947. So they're a part of the deep state. You've got the central banks connected to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is connected to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, because the CFR's stated goal was eventually, and still is, an economic global government. And they're merging through special drawing rights into digital currency eventually. And that's where that started. Wall Street is so connected with the Department of Treasury in business with all of this, they might as well just be business partners in a financial conglomerate. Our government and Wall Street are almost one and the same in the deep state. Trillions and trillions of dollars. All right, it is the system behind government. You can see that I made that S a dollar sign because the fuel of this system is money. And to get that money, they have to keep us in a state of perpetual war. Anybody seen that going on? More on that later.